Hey everyone, and welcome back. I am absolutely thrilled you're joining us today because we have a seriously fascinating explainer lined up for you. So we all know exactly what it feels like to be tired, right? But today, we're actually going to pop the hood. We're exploring the profound, totally measurable bodily disruptions that happen when you deprive yourself of sleep. And honestly, I promise you, by the end of this, you are never going to look at a missed hour of sleep the same way again.
Here is our roadmap for today. 1. The hidden cost of sleep. 2. Inflammation, the slow burn. 3. Total versus partial deprivation. 4. Systems out of sync. And finally, 5. The bottom line. Let's just jump right in.
Section 1. The hidden cost of sleep. Losing sleep is, well, it's a completely universal human experience. I mean, we've all pulled an all-nighter or, trimmed our sleep down to maybe 5 hours for days on end to meet a deadline. But I want you to genuinely think about this question. What is actually happening to your body when you stop sleeping? We usually just frame the cost as a feeling, like we feel groggy or we feel sluggish. But what if I told you the true cost isn't a feeling at all? There are invisible, structural, and cardiovascular costs being exacted on your body right under the surface. And to see them, we really have to look at the chemistry. Section 2. Inflammation, the slow burn. To really wrap our heads around this, we're leaning on some incredible data from a 2004 study out of the University of Pennsylvania. They zoomed in on a very specific biomarker called C-reactive protein, or CRP. So, synthesized in your liver, CRP is essentially a major marker of your body's acute phase inflammatory response. You can kind of think of CRP as a flare gun for cardiovascular risk. When those CRP levels are high, it tells us there's a smoldering fire of inflammation somewhere in the body. And epidemiological studies consistently show that this specific type of inflammation strongly predicts future cardiovascular issues. We're talking things like heart attacks and strokes. So, to test exactly how sleep loss affects this smoldering fire, the researchers set up a pretty grueling experiment using healthy adult subjects. They split them up to test two extremes. In one group, they tested total sleep deprivation. They literally kept healthy subjects awake for an astounding 88 continuous hours. No sleep at all. In the other group, they tested partial sleep deprivation. Here, subjects were restricted to just 4.2 hours of time in bed for 10 consecutive nights. Throughout all of this, they were constantly drawing blood to monitor their CRP levels. The researchers pushed these healthy individuals to their absolute limits just to see what would happen to their inflammatory markers.
Section 3. Total versus partial deprivation.
So, what did they actually find? Let's compare these two methods of basically starving the body of sleep. During the 88 hours of total sleep deprivation, those CRP levels took a dramatic upward trajectory, crossing right into the mild risk zone for cardiovascular events. But get this, look at the partial sleep deprivation group, the people getting just over 4 hours of sleep a night. Their CRP levels didn't just climb, they spiked massively by day 10. The body doesn't just register total sleep loss as inflammatory trauma, it treats partial sleep loss exactly the same way, if not worse. In fact, I want to highlight this specific number right here. 4. For the partial sleep deprivation group, the folks living that classic hustle culture lifestyle of I can totally survive on 4 hours of sleep, their CRP levels saw a massive 4-fold increase. By day 10, some of these subjects had moved from mild risk all the way into the highest risk quintile for cardiovascular illness. Absolutely wild. It totally proves that chronically getting just 4 hours of sleep is not just making you tired, it is biologically devastating. Because the really crucial point is this, even partial sleep loss promotes low-level systemic inflammation and escalates your cardiovascular risk. Let's just do a quick so what check-in here. Why does this actually matter to you? Well, it matters because accumulating a sleep deficit doesn't just make you yawn a lot. It creates a stable chemical marker of inflammation in your bloodstream that is slowly, silently damaging your cardiovascular system over time. Section 4. Systems out of sync. Now, the damage of lost sleep isn't just chemical, it's also mechanical. There's a fascinating study from 2022 that looked at young, perfectly healthy adults who were kept awake for just 24 hours. The researchers wanted to observe something called physiological coupling. Basically, this is the necessary communication and interplay between your different complex bodily systems. Think of your body like a magnificent symphony orchestra. You've got the respiratory system, the cardiovascular system, the brain. They are all different sections of the orchestra. For the music to sound right, it's not enough that the violins and the horns just know their parts. They have to play in perfect harmony, perfectly synced up. That vital communication, that's physiological coupling. And here is the major surprise finding from that 2022 study. Researchers took 38 healthy adults and kept them awake for 24 hours. Now, if you just looked at the individual instruments, everything seemed totally fine. Heart rate, stable. Blood pressure, stable. Heart rate variability, stable. But when they measured the actual communication between the systems, specifically the cardiorespiratory coupling and respiratory cardiovascular coupling, it had significantly decreased.
Let's quickly summarize what this means for us. After just one single day of sleep deprivation, even while routine metrics looked perfectly normal, the systemic coupling completely started breaking down. Going back to our orchestra metaphor, the individual instruments were playing perfectly in tune, but sleep loss acted like someone just walked up and removed the conductor from the podium. Without sleep, the vital, necessary communication between your lungs and your heart significantly weakened. They were playing, sure, but they were no longer reading from the same sheet music.
Section 5. The bottom line. So, we've looked at the chemistry of inflammation, and we've looked at the mechanical decoupling of your heart and lungs. And it all brings us to this main takeaway. Sleep is an active period of chemical regulation and systemic synchronization. We absolutely have to stop thinking about sleep as just passive rest or, a time when the brain simply powers down. It is an incredibly active, biologically necessary process. It's literally the time when your liver clears out inflammation, keeping those CRP levels low and protecting your heart. And it's the time when the conductor steps up to the podium to ensure your cardiovascular and respiratory systems stay perfectly coupled. Which leaves us with this final, pretty heavy question to ponder. Is your late-night routine really worth the biological cost? Knowing that just trimming a few hours of sleep sets off an inflammatory fire in your bloodstream, and knowing that just one single all-nighter breaks down the fundamental communication between your heart and lungs, well, I really hope you'll reconsider what you prioritize tonight. That is all for today's Explainer. Thank you so much for learning with me. Stay curious, stay focused, and seriously guys, get some sleep.